Hey guys, I now got my hands on some thin plywood. This is 4 mm thick, and as you can see it is quite bendy. And it was this whole bendiness that got me thinking, perhaps you can make a curved slingshot out of plywood. So that is what we're gonna do today. Okay, so we'll start off with the materials. Obviously the most important thing to have is some plywood. This one is 4 mm thick and it's made of pine. If you live in America, you can go and get that fancy Baltic birch plywood, but I can't get my hands on it over here, so I'm just gonna use this one. It's still pretty high quality though, and it looks pretty cool, and it is definitely strong enough for making slingshots, and I mean that is all we need. So this should be all the things we're gonna need. A coping saw, a set of clamps, a drill, a pine board, some screws, a set of metal files, wood rasps, and some wood glue. And if there's anything I missed, I'll inform you about it later. We will start with the plywood. So plywood is often said to be equally strong in all directions. And this is true for thicker boards because they have a lot of layers that goes in different directions and it gives us a lot of strength. For a thin sheet like this, it doesn't work the same way. We only have 3 layers, which means that 2 of these must be going in the same grain direction. In this case, the outer layers are going this way and the one in the middle is going that way. This tells us that it will be easier to bend the plywood across the grain rather than trying to bend it along the grain. Therefore, this is what I'm gonna do. Now, let's cut out the pieces that are gonna be used for the lamination. With these 3 cut out, we can now start the bending process. Okay, so to bend plywood, or any wood in general, you are gonna need to make a form. And I'm gonna make mine out of a scrap pine board. First we'll have to cut it in pieces. We'll then draw on our curve template. I should probably mention that when drawing on this template you have to be somewhat realistic. You can't make a turn like this, I mean plywood is not that flexible. Anyway, now I'm gonna cut out this shape on all 3 pieces. I now cut out all these pieces and I have tried to be as close to the line as possible. Also, a great way to see if they are parallel to each other is by taking one of the pieces from another board and exchange it for this one and then compare it. And as you can see, this is pretty alright. Now I'm gonna finish this form. To do this, I have cut out small wooden blocks that will be used as spacers in between these 3. This is how the lower part should look. If you're wondering about the screws where they are sticking out, these were the only ones I had, so that's why. Well, the upper part is made in exactly the same way. Now that the form is complete and it is looking really nicely, we can start with bending the plywood. But before I go on to my workpiece, I will try on this scrap piece first to make sure that it won't crack the wood. So I'll just slowly apply pressure in the middle. So to my surprise, this thing didn't snap. I mean, you can hear a little bit of cracking when you're bending it, but it's nothing too bad. This is of course very great, because otherwise I would have to put the plywood in water or steam it or something like that. And I don't think the glue that is used inside the plywood can handle water. That will mean that the plies or the veneers will just separate and ruin everything. So it's definitely a relief not having to care about that stuff. This worked so good so that we can remove that one now. And then we are gonna replace it with this wheel. In theory I should be able to just press these down while adding wood glue in between the layers and then let it set for a couple of hours. Now if you paid attention, I actually put the glued side upwards and then it was a bunch of glue here that I had to just scrape off. But yeah, now we're gonna try put it in the form. So as it turns out, this part right here is totally useless, don't even make it. Instead, just clamp this down, like this. The thing has been drying for 24 hours now and I'm pretty excited. I really hope that this will work. Well, it didn't spring up. Yes, finally, a bent plywood board. I think this is really cool. Now I'm gonna try to bend it to see if it will crack. No, this thing is hard as a rock. This means that we now can use this to make a slingshot. And as always, the first thing you're gonna need is a template. And I just spent half an hour drawing this on a piece of paper and I'm gonna use it now. You may or may not recognize this as a pickle fork shooter. I've never made one of those and I never used it either, so I had no idea if this is gonna be comfortable or not. I also saw that it is small enough so that I can have two of these on the same board. So well, if it's uncomfortable, then I have two uncomfortable slingshots. Let's just hope that doesn't happen. So now I've drawn the slingshots onto the plywood and I'm gonna cut it out using the coping saw. I would recommend using a jigsaw for this, because even if you have the right blade and are going really slowly and carefully, you're still gonna have some chipping along the edges. When you're cutting this out, you have to follow the curve of the board, otherwise you will not have square edges. Now we're gonna fine tune the shape using wood rasps, but before you do this, you first have to round the edges to prevent chipping. So this is starting to look pretty symmetrical. This means that we now can start rounding over the edges using first the wood rasps and then the metal files to remove all the deep scratches in the wood. Okay, so I'm gonna do my best to make this round over as even as possible. So I did a little extra shaping on the slingshot. Added finger grooves, rounded over the edges a little bit more, added grooves for the bands, and then I sanded up to 320 grit. I really don't think there is any reason sanding it beyond that, because after all this is only an experiment, and this is a prototype slingshot. Oh, and by the way, I used this glossy spray lacquer as a finish. To be honest, I don't even like the look of spray lacquer. I just use oil instead. I tried my best to remove the spray lacquer from the plywood, but it wasn't possible. Then I tried burning it, and now it's basically firewood. So this thing is going to the trash. Now, because I still want a slingshot, I made another one. And as you might remember, the plywood piece had space for two of these, so yeah, this is the second one. I also took the opportunity to make a few changes, like widening the fork gap and not making any finger grooves, because as it turns out, on this slingshot it is more comfortable not to have them. And yeah, now I'm just gonna oil it. The slingshot is completed and I have banded it up with some single layer Thermal gold. Now we're gonna see how it performs. I've gotta say that this thing is deadly accurate. Two of those three shots were bounces, but one of those were a direct hit, so this is truly an accurate shooter. Now I'm gonna try a longer distance. I just got a couple of fork hits and they both hit in the same place, right here. But I think it has more to do with me than the actual slingshot. So I think I forgot to flip the slingshot while shooting. but yeah. Anyway, also I saw that the bands have started ripping, so I'm probably gonna stop right now. It's kinda weird though, because they always start ripping at the end of the pouch, and this has happened to every single one of my band sets so far, and I think it's really annoying. Well, I see that it has started to rip right here too, but I think that has more to do with me making a bad cut. So now I'm gonna go inside and change the bands. I'll probably practice a bit more too. Thanks for watching, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.